Elena Rodriguez stood at the altar, clutching her daughter Maria's bouquet of white lilies, her hands trembling slightly from a mix of excitement and fatigue. At 62, freshly retired after 4 decades stitching garments in a bustling workshop in downtown Chicago, this was supposed to be the pinnacle of her sacrifices, the day her 28-year-old daughter tied the knot. The quaint St. Anthony's Church was adorned with roses and orchids she'd personally selected, funded by half her life savings. $10,000 painstakingly amassed through overtime shifts and frugal living. It was Maria's dream wedding, a fairy tale in white, and Elena had made it happen. But in an instant, everything shattered. Carlos, the groom, leaned in to whisper something to Maria. Elena watched in horror as her daughter's face hardened into an unfamiliar mask of disdain. Before the 90 guests, Maria's voice erupted like thunder. "You're ruining our moment. Get out of here." The words echoed off the stone walls, slicing through the stunned silence. Elena's husband, her late husband Juan would have stood by her side, but he was gone. In this frozen moment, it was Maria's accusation that pierced deepest, though directed at Elena herself. No, the scream was aimed at Elena, her own mother, for some perceived slight Elena couldn't fathom. The church fell into a deafening hush. Elena felt her heart fracture, but a quiet inner resolve whispered, "God, grant me strength." She said nothing. Instead, she gathered her purse and strode toward the exit, her chin lifted despite the tears blurring her vision. At the door, in full view of the gaping congregation, she pulled out her phone and dialed the reception venue's manager. "Cancel everything," she said firmly. "I'm not paying another dime." With that, she stepped into the sunlight, her spirit in tatters but her dignity intact. Outside, her neighbor Carla waited, having slipped out amid the chaos, her eyes red from crying. "Elena, I can't believe what I just witnessed," Carla said, enveloping her in a warm embrace. "That girl has lost her way." In Carla's compassionate gaze, Elena glimpsed a sliver of solace. She wasn't utterly alone. Yet she knew her role as the unwavering mother had ended at that threshold. What no one anticipated was that this betrayal would ignite a cascade of transformations, reshaping lives in ways unimaginable. My name is Elena Rodriguez, and if you told me 5 years ago I'd be recounting this tale, I'd have dismissed it as folly. Born in a dusty Midwest hamlet as the oldest of 8 siblings, I fled to the city at 18, chasing opportunity. That's where I met Juan, my steadfast husband in a garment factory. He was 23, I was 20, when we exchanged vows in a modest chapel ceremony. Juan wasn't wealthy, but he was diligent and true-hearted. For 35 years, he toiled as a welder in an auto plant, while I sewed piecework at home to supplement our income. We raised 2 children, Maria, born a year into our marriage, and Antonio, who arrived 4 years later. Juan always called me the family's anchor, the one who orchestrated our daily rhythm while he battled the grind. In our early days, I'd rise at dawn to brew coffee, iron school clothes, pack lunches, and tutor the kids before diving into my sewing orders. Wedding gowns, prom dresses, alterations that kept the bills paid. Sundays meant mass with the children, Juan snoring peacefully after a grueling week. It was a humble existence, laced with affection, or so I believed. Juan passed 9 years ago, felled by a stroke at 56. He was repairing a friend's fence when it struck. By the time I reached the ER, he was gone. The doctor assured me it was swift, painless, but my grief was a storm that nearly drowned me. It felt like my essence had been halved. After the burial, Maria, fresh out of college and clerking at a boutique, moved back in. "I can't leave you alone, Mom," she insisted. Antonio, then 22, was shacked up with his partner Sophia in a cozy flat downtown. Maria's stay stretched from months to years. At 23, 24, 25, she lingered, citing comfort in our routines. She met Carlos at 26. He was a mid-level accountant at a city firm, stable and ambitious. I envisioned a quick engagement, Maria forging her path, but they dated leisurely for 3 years. All the while I labored on. Juan's modest pension and insurance barely covered the mortgage, so I sewed relentlessly, from sunrise to midnight, crafting quinceañera outfits, business suits, even theatrical costumes. Maria chipped in sporadically, claiming she was hoarding for her future, splurging on dates with Carlos or wardrobe updates. I never complained. A mother's home is her child's sanctuary, I reasoned. Plus, her evening chatter and shared TV marathons warded off loneliness. When Maria announced her engagement, joy overwhelmed me. Finally, I thought, she'll build her nest. We dove into planning, a church affair, elegant yet understated. The tally mounted, venue, gown, catering, florals surpassing my reserves. In a moment of blind devotion, I pawned my cherished antique sewing machine, a gift from Juan, along with my serger. Those tools had been my livelihood, but I parted with them unhesitatingly. Combined with my nest egg, it totaled $10,000. Handing it to Maria, I said, "This is my greatest gift, be blissful." She wept, embracing me. "Mom, you're incomparable. I'll repay your kindness forever." The prelude to the wedding was magical. Maria and I shopped for her lace gown, sampled cakes, arranged bouquets. It evoked childhood tea parties now manifested. I felt vital, cherished, the matriarch orchestrating her daughter's bliss. Antonio beamed for his sister, he and Sophia opting for cohabitation but cheering Maria's traditional choice. "To each their own," Antonio quipped. "As long as she's content." A week prior, Maria urged me to meet Carlos's folks. They resided in an upscale suburb, their sprawling home boasting manicured lawns and a pool. Patricia, Carlos's mother, greeted me with practiced courtesy, her smile not reaching her eyes. Over tea in their sunlit kitchen, she quizzed me about my background, my factory days, our modest roots. "How quaint," she murmured, her tone laced with condescension. Carlos's father, a retired executive, barely spoke, buried in his newspaper. I sensed their disapproval of our simple life, but I brushed it off. Maria deserved happiness, not their snobbery. The wedding morning dawned crisp and promising. I helped Maria into her dress, pinning her veil with trembling fingers. "You look angelic," I whispered. She smiled, but her eyes seemed distant. At the church, guests mingled, family from the old town, co-workers, neighbors like Carla. As the organ swelled, Maria processed down the aisle on Antonio's arm, radiant. Carlos awaited, beaming. Vows exchanged smoothly, rings slipped on. But as the priest intoned the final blessings, Carlos whispered to Maria. Her expression iced over. Then came the outburst. "You're ruining our moment, get out!" directed at me. The guests gasped. I realized earlier I'd adjusted her train, perhaps too fussily in her eyes. Or was it deeper, a resentment bubbling from years of perceived smothering? Humiliation burned, but I exited gracefully, canceling the reception as vowed. Back home, I collapsed, sobs racking me. Carla dropped by with soup, her outrage palpable. "Maria's ungrateful," she fumed. "After all you've done." Days blurred into isolation. Maria and Carlos honeymooned in Hawaii, funded partly by my sacrifice. Antonio called, torn. "Sis regrets it, Mom, give her time." But Maria's silence stung. Michael Waite, Antonio visited with Sophia, urging reconciliation. "Family's everything," he said. Weeks later, a knock, Maria eyes swollen. "Mom, I'm sorry," she choked. "Carlos's family pressured me. They said you were embarrassing, too involved." I snapped. We talked for hours, unearthing buried grievances, her feeling overshadowed by my sacrifices, my unwitting control. Tears flowed, forgiveness tentative. But the incident sparked my rebirth. With savings depleted and machines sold, I pivoted. Enrolling in community classes, I learned digital design, parlaying sewing skills into online tutorials. My channel, Alina's Stitches, exploded, tips on upcycling, custom patterns. Income flowed, independence bloomed. Maria and Carlos struggled initially. His job faltered amid recession, her boutique closed. They moved in temporarily, roles reversed. I guided without dominating, fostering growth. Antonio and Sophia wed quietly, inspired by our resilience. Years on, at 67, I'm thriving. A book deal for my memoir, grandkids from both children. Maria and I rebuilt stronger. That altar humiliation. A catalyst proving life's twists forge unbreakable bonds. From ashes we rose. Alina Vargas stood at the altar of St. Gabriel's Church, her fingers gently cradling her daughter Sophia's bouquet of ivory roses, a symbol of the purity and hope she'd poured into this day. At 63, having just retired from 42 years of tailoring in a modest atelier in Chicago's bustling Loop District, Alina had envisioned this as her crowning achievement, the wedding of her 29-year-old daughter. The church's arched ceilings were festooned with garlands she'd handpicked, all paid for with $12,000 from her scrimped savings, every cent a testament to her devotion. Sophia's dream of a classic white wedding was unfolding before her eyes, or so Alina believed. But fate twisted cruelly. Raphael, the groom, murmured something to Sophia, and Alina watched her daughter's warm smile curdle into icy detachment. In front of 100 guests, Sophia's voice shattered the sanctity. "You're overshadowing our joy. Leave now." The accusation, hurled at Alina for reasons she couldn't grasp, hung in the air like a death knell. The congregation froze, whispers rippling like waves. Alina's heart splintered, yet a divine whisper urged, "Lord, lend me fortitude." She uttered no retort, simply collected her handbag and marched to the exit. There, amid the stunned onlookers, she phoned the venue manager. "Terminate the reception, all of it. No further payments from me." With poise masking her agony, she departed, her maternal world crumbling. Outside, her neighbor Marta lingered, having fled the scene in distress, her face etched with sympathy. "Alina, that was unthinkable," Marta murmured, pulling her into an embrace. "Sophia's lost her compassion." In Marta's kind eyes, Alina found a fragile anchor. She wasn't entirely forsaken, but she knew her era as the selfless mother had ended at those church doors. Unbeknownst to all, this indignity would spark unforeseen metamorphoses, altering destinies in profound ways. My name is Alina Vargas, and 5 years ago I'd have scoffed at the notion of sharing this saga. Raised in a rural Midwest village as the eldest of 9, I ventured to the city at 19, seeking prosperity. There, in a bustling fabric mill, I encountered Miguel, my beloved husband. He was 24, I 21, when we wed in a humble parish rite. Miguel, though not affluent, was industrious and principled. For 32 years, he labored as an electrician in a warehouse, while I tailored at home to bolster our finances. We nurtured 2 offspring, Sophia, arriving 2 years post-nuptials, and Diego, born 5 years hence. Miguel dubbed me the household's core, the orchestrator of our lives amid his grueling shifts. Mornings began at 4:30, preparing meals, mending clothes, aiding homework, before I'd sew until midnight, bridal veils, evening gowns, corporate attire. Sundays brought church with the children, Miguel recuperating from exhaustion. It was unadorned yet affectionate, or so I presumed. Miguel succumbed 10 years ago to a pulmonary embolism at 57. He was wiring a client's home when it struck. Arriving at the hospital, he was already lost. The physician claimed it was mercifully quick, but my sorrow was an abyss. Half my essence vanished. Post-funeral, Sophia, newly graduated and employed at a fashion outlet, relocated homeward. "You need me, Mama," she asserted. Diego, 23 then, cohabited with his fiancée Lucia in a compact loft. Sophia's sojourn extended indefinitely. At 24, 25, 26, she encountered Raphael at 27, a civil engineer with a steady salary. I anticipated swift matrimony, Sophia embarking on her journey, yet they courted for 4 years. Throughout, I toiled ceaselessly. Miguel's meager benefits scarcely sufficed, so I crafted endlessly, debutante frocks, bespoke suits, festival costumes. Sophia contributed sporadically, citing wedding funds, outings with Raphael, professional attire. I refrained from protest. A mother's abode is refuge, I rationalized. Her nightly tailies and companionable evenings alleviated solitude. Sophia's engagement announcement ignited ecstasy. At last, I mused, her own hearth. Planning ensued, ecclesiastical vows, refined simplicity. Costs escalated, sanctuary, attire, blooms, banquet exceeding my hoard. Naively, I auctioned my vintage sewing apparatus, Miguel's gifts, my sustenance tools. Paired with savings, it yielded $12,000. Presenting it, I said, "My utmost offering. Flourish in joy." Sophia teared up, enveloping me. "Mama, you're unparalleled. Your sacrifices are eternal in my heart." Pre-wedding fervor bonded us, selecting her satin gown, sampling entrees, arranging decor. It mirrored childhood pretend nuptials, now tangible. I felt indispensable, revered, the bride's matron enabling reveries. Diego rejoiced for his sibling, he and Lucia favoring partnership sans ceremony but endorsing Sophia's path. "Each to their bliss," Diego noted. A fortnight prior, Sophia insisted on meeting Raphael's kin. They dwelled in a posh enclave, their expansive abode featuring marble counters and a gazebo. Isabella, Raphael's mother, welcomed cordially yet aloofly. Over supper, we discussed the nuptials, the dues, aspirations. Raphael voiced peculiar remarks on revamping rituals, eschewing archaic norms. When Isabella inquired about our customs, he retorted, "We'll forge our path, sans antiquated formalities." I dismissed it. Youth innovates, I pondered. Sophia's contentment trumped minutiae. The eve before, Sophia lodged with me, honoring superstition. We dined, reminiscing her sheet-draped bridal play. "Tomorrow, my fantasy materializes, thanks to you, Mama," she beamed. Bedtime brought elation mingled with wistfulness, my girl maturing, departing, yet rightful. Dawn broke idyllic, azure skis, mild breeze. Sophia radiated in her ensemble. I donned my sole formal garb, an emerald sheath from a cousin's union. At church, proceedings flowed. Punctual arrivals, resplendent flora, Padre Lewis's poignant homily. Vows evoked tears, I wept pridefully front row. Post-ceremony photos outdoors, the lensman proposed kin shots. Oddity emerged, Raphael balked at including Alina with a Miguel memento. "Just my bride, we're nascent kin now." Sophia chuckled uneasily. "Darling, a snap with Mama's harmless." He persisted. "My love, it's us henceforth. No past echoes." Sophia acquiesced hesitantly. Alina masked hurt their occasion after all. Reception commenced at 5 p.m. Ornate tables, four-tiered confection Alina commissioned, ensemble she enlisted. Festivity burgeoned. Tradition placed Alina beside Sophia, but Raphael whispered to staff, her seat relocated peripherally. "For sponsors," Sophia hastily justified. "You get it, Mama." During repast, Alina conversed with kin from afar, yet unease nod. Sophia averted glances, appearing strained. The inaugural waltz altered all. Sophia and Raphael swirled, then Sophia with Alina traditionally, Raphael with Isabella. Normality prevailed, but mother-in-law dance loomed. Raphael seized the mic. "Gratitude for sharing our milestone," he intoned resolutely. "Sophia and I elect to commence afresh, prioritizing our duo's horizon. Thus, respectfully, we'll amend unfit traditions." Silence descended. Alina's gut twisted. Sophia stood adjacent, smirking oddly. "No in-law dance," Raphael declared, eyeing Alina. "We deem it perpetuates toxic maternal-child ties." Words lacerated like shards. Gazes converged, Marta gaped, murmurs arose. Sophia grasped the mic. "He's correct." Her tone quivered yet steadfast. "I must mature, cease Mama reliance, our union demands autonomy." Hush intensified. Alina reeled, nightmarish. "Moreover," Sophia hardened, "Mama's emotionally clingy, she must forge her path sans intruding hours." Devastation peaked clingy. Alina, who slaved for provisions, liquidated assets for this fate, sought naught but love. Rising shakily amid pitying stares, Alina approached her belongings. Defiant Sophia awaited outburst. Instead, Alina phoned the coordinator. "I'm Alina Varga's event patron. Halt residual services, music, libations, dessert all." Baffled coordinator. "Mid-fest, ma'am. I'm financier, I decree cessation. Reimburse surplus." Sophia rushed. "Mama, what madness." "Precisely your edict, dear," Alina composed. "I'll exist independently, commencing now." She exited, Marta supporting. Alina, reconsider, tongues wag. "Let them," Alina replied. "Truth's aired." Raphael neared, flustered. "Senora Varga's misinterpretation, we didn't intend." "Crystal clear." Alina met his gaze. "Enjoy utter freedom henceforth." Departing regally, murmurs trailed. Marta pursued, "To my abode, solitude's ill." Yet Alina craved isolation to dissect the debacle. Homeward by cab to the dwelling Miguel, and she shared, child-rearing haven, sowing sanctuary. That eve, in vacant kitchen, Alina pondered maternal lapses. When did Sophia view her as encumbrance, not savior? When did adoration morph to dependency? Yet for the first in eons, Alina queried her essence beyond maternity. Who was she, unmoored from sacrifices? Dawn illuminated resolve. She phoned Diego. "Sophia's choice, I'll adapt." He visited, appalled. "She's erred, Mama, reconciliation." "Her initiative," Alina stated. Weeks elapsed. Sophia and Raphael vacationed in the Bahamas, partly Alina funded. Silence endured. Alina, funds depleted, machines gone, innovated. Community workshops taught digital patterning. She launched Alina's Threads, virtual sewing guides. Virality ensued, upcycling hacks, pattern hacks, revenue surged, autonomy bloomed. Sophia returned, contrite, knock at door, tear-streaked. "Mama, forgive," she sobbed. "Raphael's clan deemed you overbearing, I yielded." Hours unraveled resentments. Sophia's suffocation from Alina's zeal, Alina's unwitting dominance. Catharsis forged wary pardon. Trials persisted. Raphael's firm downsized, Sophia's shop shuttered amid downturn. They sought shelter. Alina hosted, guiding Sans control. Bonds mended. Diego and Lucia eloped simply, inspired by Alina's fortitude. At 68, Alina thrives. Podcast on resilient women, mentorship program, grandchildren from both. Sophia and she reconciled profoundly. That reception fiasco, a forge tempering spirits, from rupture, renewal. Echoes of independence. In the bustling city of Eldridge, where the skyline pierced the clouds like ambitious dreams, lived Alina Vasquez, a widow in her late 50s. Alina had built her life around her family after her husband, Marco, passed away from a sudden heart attack 15 years ago. She had worked tirelessly as a florist, arranging bouquets for weddings, funerals, and everything in between to provide for her 2 children, her daughter Sophia, now 28, and her son Javier, 25. Alina's shop, Blossoms Eternal, was more than a business. It was her sanctuary, filled with the sweet scents of roses and lilies that masked the loneliness she often felt. Sophia was Alina's pride and joy, a vibrant young woman who had pursued a career in graphic design. She met her fiancé, Alex Rivera, at a design conference 3 years ago. Alex was charismatic, ambitious, and came from a family of entrepreneurs who valued independence above all. When Sophia and Alex announced their engagement, Alina threw herself into the wedding preparations. She sold some of her prized antique vases to cover the deposit on the venue, an elegant ballroom at the Eldridge Grand Hotel. She hand-picked the flowers, designed the centerpieces, and even sewed lace overlays for the bridesmaids' dresses in her spare time. It was her way of showing love, through actions, through sacrifice. The wedding day arrived on a crisp autumn afternoon in 2025. The ballroom was a vision of elegance, white drapes cascading from the ceilings, tables adorned with Alina's floral masterpieces, and a string quartet playing softly in the background. Alina sat at the head table, beaming with pride as she watched Sophia glide down the aisle in a gown Alina had helped alter to perfection. The ceremony was flawless, filled with tears of joy and promises of forever. But the reception took an unexpected turn. As the toasts began, Alex stood up, microphone in hand, his face serious yet composed. Sophia stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Friends and family," Alex began, his voice echoing through the hushed room. "Sophia and I are thrilled to start this new chapter, but we've decided to embrace our future by shedding some outdated traditions that don't align with our values." The room grew quiet. Alina felt a twinge of unease, her fork pausing midair over her salad. What could he mean? Alex continued, locking eyes with Alina. "There won't be a mother-daughter dance tonight. Sophia and I believe it's time to move beyond rituals that perpetuate emotional codependency between parents and children." The words landed like a thunderclap. Whispers rippled through the guests. Alina's sister, Maria, seated nearby, gasped audibly. Alina's heart pounded. She felt exposed, as if the spotlight had swung directly onto her. Sophia took the microphone next, her voice steady but edged with emotion. "Alex is right. It's time for me to step into adulthood fully without relying so heavily on my mom. We want our marriage to begin with true independence." The silence was deafening, broken only by the hum of the chandeliers above. Alina sat frozen, her mind reeling. How could this be? She had raised Sophia single-handedly after Marco's death, working double shifts at the flower shop to afford dance lessons, art classes, and college tuition. She had been there for every scraped knee, every heartbreak, every triumph. And now this, publicly branded as a clingy mother. Sophia wasn't done. Her tone sharpened. "My mom has always been emotionally reliant on us kids. It's time she builds her own life without hovering over ours constantly." The accusation stung like thorns from Alina's own roses. Emotionally reliant? Alina, who had rebuilt her life from ashes, who had never remarried to focus on her children, who asked for nothing but their love in return. Tears welled in Alina's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Instead, she rose from her chair, her knees weak but her resolve hardening. The room watched in stunned silence as she approached the head table and retrieved her purse. She pulled out her phone and called the event coordinator, her voice clear and unwavering. "This is Alina Vasquez, the one who booked and paid for this venue. I need you to cancel all remaining services immediately. The band, the bar, the dessert course, everything." The coordinator blinked in confusion. "Cancel, but we're in the middle of—" "I'm the payer," Alina interrupted firmly, "and I say it's over. Calculate the refund and process it." Sophia rushed over, her veil trailing behind her. "Mom, what are you doing? This is insane." "Exactly what you suggested, darling," Alina replied, her voice calm despite the storm inside. "I'm stepping back, living my own life without being in yours." She turned and walked toward the exit, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Maria caught up to her in the lobby. "Alina, don't go like this. The family will gossip for months." "Let them," Alina said, straightening her shawl. "They've already seen the show." Alex approached next, his face pale. "Mrs. Vasquez, I think we misspoke. We didn't mean to offend." "You meant every word," Alina said, meeting his gaze. "And now you'll have the independence you crave, completely." She stepped out into the cool evening air, hailing a cab back to her modest apartment above the flower shop. That night, alone in her kitchen surrounded by wilting sample bouquets, Alina poured herself a glass of wine and reflected. Where had she gone wrong? Had her love smothered Sophia instead of nurturing her? She thought back to the countless nights she'd stayed up arranging flowers while helping Sophia with homework, or the times she'd driven hours to attend her art exhibitions. Was that dependency or devotion? The next morning, Alina's phone buzzed incessantly, calls from relatives, texts from friends expressing shock. But one message stood out, from Sophia. "Mom, we need to talk. Can you come over this afternoon?" Alina hesitated, then agreed. She took the subway to Sophia and Alex's sleek downtown loft, her heart heavy. Sophia opened the door, looking disheveled, her eyes red from crying. Alex hovered in the background, arms crossed. "Mom, about last night," Sophia began, gesturing to the couch. They sat, the air thick with tension. "We didn't mean to hurt you," Sophia said. "But we need boundaries. No more unannounced visits, no more questioning our decisions, no more expecting us to check in daily." Alina listened, her hands folded in her lap. "And if I don't agree to these rules?" Sophia and Alex exchanged glances. "Then, it might create distance," Sophia admitted softly. "More arguments, more strain, we might have to pull back further." The ultimatum hung in the air. Alina stood, feeling a profound sadness. "I see. This isn't a discussion, it's a decree." She paused at the door. "What hurts most, Sophia, is that after all these years, you view my love as a chain, not a support. And instead of telling me privately, you ambushed me with him." She left, the door clicking shut behind her. On the subway home, Alina observed the other passengers, tired mothers with strollers, elderly women clutching bags, and wondered if they too felt discarded by their children. Back home, a voicemail waited from Javier. "Mom, Sophia filled me in. Can I come by tomorrow? We need to chat." Alina sighed, erasing it. She wasn't ready for more judgment. But Javier showed up anyway the next evening, carrying takeout from her favorite Mexican spot, enchiladas and tamales. He was her steady one, working as a mechanic in a garage, living with his girlfriend Rosa in a cozy suburb. They had been together 4 years, content without rushing into marriage. "Mom, you okay?" Javier asked, hugging her tightly. "Exhausted, Mijo, just exhausted." They ate in the living room, surrounded by family photos on the walls. Javier set down his fork. "Sophia told me about the wedding fiasco in your talk, I think. Well, both sides messed up." "Both," Alina echoed. "Yeah, Sophia and Alex were cruel doing it publicly like that, but maybe the heart of it isn't wrong." Alina's chest tightened. "You think I'm overbearing too?" Javier chose his words carefully. "Sometimes, Mom, Remember when Sophia bombed that big design project in college? You called her professor, offered to help rework it. You were more stressed than she was. It was true. Alina had paced the shop floor, brainstorming fixes, while Sophia shrugged it off. Or with me, Javier continued. When I quit my office job to become a mechanic, you researched every certification program, grilled my boss about safety protocols. I appreciated it, but it felt like you didn't trust me to handle it. Alina stared at her plate. Isn't that what mothers do? Worry. Worry, yes, but not carry the weight more than we do. It's like, your happiness depends on ours being perfect. The insight hit hard. Alina thought of Marco's death, how she'd poured everything into the kids to fill the void. Had she lost herself in the process? So what now? She asked. Javier squeezed her hand. Build boundaries gently, not like Sophia's doing with walls. Talk openly with love. And Mom, maybe it's time for you to chase your own dreams. Travel like you always talked about, or expand the shop. Alina nodded slowly. And our relationship, do you need rules too? I want us to evolve, Javier said. You're my mom, but I'm an adult. Let's support each other as equals. That night, Alina rummaged through an old trunk in her attic. She found sketchbooks from her youth, drawings of exotic gardens she'd dreamed of visiting, photos of her and Marco in their early days, laughing on a beach in Mexico, and letters from Sophia as a child. To the greatest mom ever, I love you forever. Tears flowed freely now. She realized her love hadn't changed. The children had grown. Perhaps she needed to grow too. Weeks passed. Alina threw herself into her shop, launching a new line of eco-friendly arrangements that drew rave reviews online. She joined a widows' support group, making friends who encouraged her to book a solo trip to Italy, something she'd always postponed. Sophia called sporadically, but the conversations were strained. Alex's influence loomed, pushing for more distance. Javier visited often, helping with deliveries and sharing stories of his life with Rosa. One evening, as Alina closed the shop, Sophia appeared unannounced, looking vulnerable. Mom, I miss you. Things with Alex. We're struggling. The independence we wanted feels empty without family. Alina pulled her into a hug. I've missed you too, but let's rebuild slowly. No rules, just understanding. Over time, they mended. Alina learned to step back, finding joy in her own pursuits. Sophia realized love wasn't dependency, it was a choice. Alex softened, seeing the value in Alina's warmth. Javier bridged them, his steady presence a reminder of balance. In Eldridge, amid blooming flowers, Alina discovered she was more than a mother. She was Alina Vasquez, resilient and whole. And in that wholeness, her family found their way back, stronger than before. Echoes of independence, continued and completed. In the vibrant city of Eldridge, Alina Vasquez had always been the pillar of her family. After losing her husband Marco to a heart attack 15 years earlier, she had channeled her grief into her florist shop, blossoms eternal, and into raising her children. Sophia, her spirited 28-year-old daughter, and Javier, her thoughtful 25-year-old son. Alina's days were filled with the aroma of fresh blooms, but her heart was tethered to her kids. She had sacrificed vacations, hobbies, and even her health at times to ensure they had everything: education, opportunities, love. Sophia, a talented graphic designer, had met Alex Rivera, a driven software engineer from a family that prized self-reliance. Their engagement brought joy, but also Alina's all-in involvement, selling heirloom jewelry to fund the venue, crafting floral arches, and micromanaging details. The wedding at the Eldridge Grand Hotel was meant to be a celebration, but it unraveled during the reception. Alex's announcement, no mother-daughter dance to break free from emotional codependency, left Alina reeling. Sophia's endorsement, labeling Alina as overly reliant, shattered her. In response, Alina canceled the remaining festivities, declaring her own independence. She left with dignity, supported briefly by her sister Maria, but chose solitude to process the betrayal. At home, Alina questioned her motherhood. Had her sacrifices, late nights arranging flowers while helping with homework, selling assets for their dreams, been seen as burdens? The next day, Sophia invited her over. In their modern loft, Sophia and Alex laid out boundaries. No drop-ins, no unsolicited advice, limited contact. Alina challenged them. "What if I disagree?" Their response implied distance, even estrangement. Heartbroken, Alina left, feeling like an outsider in her daughter's life. Javier's call followed. He visited, bringing comfort food, and gently confronted her. "Both sides erred," he said. Sophia's public humiliation was wrong, but Alina's overprotectiveness, fretting more than the kids, intervening in their issues, had roots in truth. Examples poured out. Alina's panic over Sophia's college setbacks, her obsession with Javier's career shift to mechanics. "It's normal to care, Mom, but not to carry their weight." Alina absorbed it. "Transition to mother of independent adults," Javier's words echoed. "Therapy, maybe, to navigate this shift. For Sophia, give space. True love means letting go." Nights blurred as Alina reflected. Her love wasn't control, but perhaps it had blurred lines. She had postponed her dreams, traveling to see European gardens, expanding her shop for them. Now, who was she beyond Mom? 2 weeks of silence from Sophia amplified Alina's isolation. Phone rings brought hope, but it was Maria checking in or clients inquiring about floral arrangements. Financially, Alina struggled. Selling vases for the wedding left her without key tools. Her modest pension covered basics, but savings dwindled. One morning, a neighbor, Mrs. Harlan, asked for custom boutonnieres. Alina confessed, no more supplies, sold for expenses. Mrs. Harlan's pity stung. "What now?" she asked. Alina pondered that daily. Maria visited often. "Heard from Sophia?" "Nothing," Maria opined. Alina was dedicated, perhaps excessively. Recalling Alina waiting outside Sophia's teen parties, Maria contrasted her own daughter's independence. Protection, yes, but too much. Days later at the farmer's market, Alina bumped into Alex's mother, Patricia Rivera. Her faux warmth masked judgment. "How are the newlyweds?" Alina hedged. "Adjusting," Patricia probed. "You suppose?" Then praised their mature boundaries, implying Alina's interference needed curbing. Sophia needed independence from her, Patricia said. Humiliated, Alina fled, realizing Alex had painted her as the villain. That evening, Alina resolved. Full withdrawal from Sophia's life, no calls, no pursuit, but she'd reclaim hers. At 58, with sewing skills from altering clothes, a side hustle alongside flowers, she job hunted. Boutiques, tailors, rejections piled. Too old, no openings. Discouraged, her savings neared empty. The apartment above the shop risked foreclosure. Then she recalled her cousin Isabella, widowed similarly but reinvented in California, caregiving for retirees. Alina called. Isabella empathized. "Kids today? Ungrateful. But this, your chance." She knew openings in senior care, good pay, housing included. "Come west, start fresh." Alina hesitated. Uproot. But with nothing holding her, Sophia distant, Javier stable with girlfriend Rosa, she applied. Interviews via video. A position in Santa Monica caring for an elderly artist couple. Ocean views, steady income, time for her art, sketching gardens. Packing stirred emotions. Photos of young Sophia and Javier, happy, loved. Had she failed? Or succeeded too well, raising independents who outgrew her? Javier helped pack. "Mom, California, that's huge." Supportive but concerned. "What about Sophia, Alina? She wanted space, she'll get the continent." Javier promised visits. Rosa baked farewell treats. Sophia learned via Javier. A frantic call. "Mom, moving, without telling me." Alina, "You set boundaries, I respected them." Sophia tearful. "I didn't mean forever." Alex joined. "We overstepped." But Alina stood firm. "This is my independence." Departure day, airport hugs from Javier, Maria. Sophia arrived last minute, remorseful. "Mom, I was wrong. Your love wasn't dependency, it was strength. I pushed you away fearing I'd never stand alone." Alina hugged her. "You can, and so can I." In Santa Monica, Alina thrived. Caregiving suited her nurturing side, but with boundaries. She sketched beaches, joined art classes, bloomed anew. Sophia visited monthly, rebuilding. Alex apologized. Family dinners became tradition, equal, respectful. Javier proposed to Rosa. Alina flew back for the wedding, dancing freely. No humiliations, just joy. Years later, Alina reflected. Independence wasn't loss, but growth. Her family, once fractured, flourished in mutual respect. In her coastal garden amid blooming roses, Alina was whole, mother, artist, woman. The house on Coral Lane. Isabella Morales had never imagined leaving Chicago. At 62, she still measured her life in the familiar. The squeak of the third stair in the old bungalow on South Halsted, the smell of Robert's coffee lingering in the kitchen long after he died, the way the sewing machine hummed under her fingers while Linda practiced piano in the next room. For 38 years, that house had been her universe. Then, in one evening, one cruel, crystal-clear evening at her daughter Camilla's wedding, the universe shrank to the size of a single sentence. "We need independence from you, Mama." The words were delivered by Camilla's new husband, Diego, in front of 200 guests. No mother-daughter dance. No emotional dependency. Camilla, beautiful in white lace that Isabella had sewn herself, stood beside him and nodded. Isabella's heart cracked open right there between the salmon course and the cake cutting. Instead of crying, she did the only thing that felt powerful. She canceled the band, the bar, the dessert table, and walked out with her head high. She paid for the privilege of her own humiliation. The weeks that followed were quiet and terrible. Camilla sent no apology, only a list of healthy boundaries, texted at 2 a.m. Her son Mateo, 25 and kinder, came over with tamales and hard truths. "You worry louder than we do, Mama. Sometimes it drowns us out." He didn't ask her to change overnight. He only asked her to try. But trying cost money she no longer had. She had sold her industrial sewing machines, her livelihood, to pay the final wedding invoice. Savings evaporated. The pension barely covered the gas bill. Neighbors still knocked, asking for hems and alterations, and every time Isabella had to say, "I have nothing to sew with," the shame tasted metallic. One desperate Tuesday, she called her cousin Carmen in St. Augustine, Florida. Carmen had fled Chicago 20 years earlier after her own husband died. Now she lived in a pastel cottage 2 blocks from the Atlantic and laughed easily on the phone. "Come south, Prima. Snowbirds need housekeepers, companions, cooks. They pay in American dollars and sunshine. You're not dead yet. Sell the house." The idea felt like treason. That night, Isabella walked every room with a glass of Merlot, touching the marks on the doorframe where she had measured Camilla and Mateo each birthday. Robert's worn armchair still faced the television that no one watched anymore. She sat in it and cried, not for the walls, but for the life that had lived inside them and then walked away without looking back. By morning, the tears had dried into something fiercer: resolve. She called a realtor. She dusted off her old resume, 40 years altering wedding gowns, hemming priest vestments, sewing dance costumes for every recital in Pilsen. She scheduled a phone interview with a Mrs. Alina Whitmore, a retired art history professor from Boston who wintered in a pale yellow house on Coral Lane. Mrs. Whitmore's voice was warm and papery. "I don't need a servant, Isabella. I need a friend who can cook a decent pot roast and doesn't mind listening to my stories twice. My husband has dementia now. Some days he thinks I'm his sister. I get lonely." Isabella heard herself say, "I know lonely very well, Senora. I think we will be good for each other." The house sold in 7 weeks to a young couple expecting their first child. They loved the marks on the doorframe. Isabella left the piano. Camilla had never learned to play well anyway, and took only what fit in 2 suitcases and a box of photographs. Mateo and his girlfriend, Valeria, drove her to the airport. Camilla did not come. At the gate, Mateo hugged her so hard her ribs creaked. "Call me when you land, Mama, and when you're ready, we'll visit, promise." She kissed his forehead the way she had when he was 5. "I'm not disappearing, Mijo. I'm just learning how to take up less space in your lives and more space in my own." Florida in October smelled of salt and possibility. Carmen met her at the Jacksonville airport with a paper cone of roasted chickpeas and a grin. The house on Coral Lane was exactly as promised. Wide plank pine floors, shelves of art books, windows that caught the sunrise like stained glass. Mr. Whitmore shuffled in circles, calling Isabella, Clara, some days, and darling on others. Mrs. Aliner taught her how to make New England clam chowder and paid her double what she had ever earned sewing 16-hour days in Chicago. For the first month, Isabella woke at 4 a.m. reaching for children who were not there. She walked the beach alone until the grief loosened its grip, replaced by something lighter, curiosity. She bought a second-hand sewing machine at a thrift shop for $75. Snowbirds began knocking. Word travels fast in a town of retirees. Can you shorten these drapes? Let out this jacket. Hem this christening gown for my granddaughter. By December, she had a waiting list. She took watercolor classes at the community center. She learned to paddleboard at sunrise with a group of silver-haired widows who swore like sailors and laughed louder than teenagers. She sent Matteo photos of sunsets and received, in return, a video of Valeria's positive pregnancy test. He captioned it, "Your first grandchild is learning to swim before she's even born." Camilla's first message came on Christmas Eve, a single line. "I miss you." Isabella stared at it for an hour, thumb hovering. Then she replied with a photo of the ocean at twilight and wrote, "I miss you too. The door is open when you're ready to walk through it without a list of rules." Spring arrived purple with jacaranda blossoms. Camilla and Diego flew down for a long weekend. No agenda, no lectures. They slept in the guest room that used to be storage for Mrs. Whitmore's paintings. On the second night, Camilla sat on the porch steps with Isabella, barefoot, the way she used to sit on the back stairs in Chicago eating popsicles. "I was cruel," she said quietly. "You were scared," Isabella answered. "I thought if I cut you out cleanly it would hurt less. It hurt more." Isabella put an arm around her daughter's shoulders, carefully, the way you touch a wild thing that might bolt. "I needed to learn I could stand without you holding me up every second," Camilla whispered. "And I needed to learn I could stand without you needing me every second," Isabella said. They cried into each other's hair like they hadn't since Camilla was 9 and broke her wrist falling off her bike. Diego apologized the next morning over coffee. He looked smaller without his microphone and his audience of 200. "I thought boundaries meant building walls," he said. "I didn't know they could be bridges." Isabella forgave him with a plate of arepas and a warning look that still worked at 62. Years slipped by, gentle as tide. Matteo and Valeria married on the beach at Anastasia Island. Isabella walked Valeria down the sand aisle when her own mother couldn't travel. Camilla had a little girl she named Clara Robertita, after the grandfather she never met and the grandmother she almost lost. Every winter the house on Coral Lane filled with grandchildren's laughter, suitcases, and the smell of sancocho. Every summer Isabella locked the shutters, kissed Mrs. Whitmore goodbye. Mr. Whitmore had passed peacefully the year before, and traveled Portugal, Peru, Provence, with money she earned with her own 2 hands and a heart that had finally learned its own size. One evening, 10 years after she had arrived with 2 suitcases and a broken spirit, Isabella stood on her tiny balcony watching the moon rise over the Atlantic. Behind her, the sewing machine hummed. She was finishing a baptism gown for Clara Robertita's new baby brother. Her phone buzzed, a text from Camilla. "We're 10 minutes away. Leftovers from Matteo's birthday. Open the door, Mama." Isabella smiled, wiped her hands on the apron she had sewn from fabric bought in Marrakesh, and went downstairs. The house on Coral Lane glowed soft yellow against the night, full of light, full of voices, full of family that had learned, slowly, painfully, beautifully, how to hold on without holding too tight. She was still their mother. She was finally fully herself. And the ocean kept singing the same song it had sung the first night she arrived. "You are home, you are free, you are enough." Salt in the air, salt in the wounds. Valeria Navarro had always believed that love was measured in stitches. For 41 years, she had sewn other people's dreams into reality. Wedding gowns, first communion dresses, prom tuxedos, even the tiny satin shoes for premature Bobbies in the NICU. Her little shop on 26th Street in Little Village had been the heartbeat of the neighborhood. When her husband Louis died of cancer 8 years earlier, Valeria simply kept the doors open longer, took in more alterations, and poured every extra peso into her children's futures. Her daughter Natalia, 28, brilliant and headstrong, married Tomás Aguilar in a lavish spring wedding that Valeria paid for by selling the last of her industrial machines. The reception was held at the Crystal Gardens ballroom, and Valeria had never felt prouder. Until the microphone. Tomás, tall and certain, announced to 300 guests that there would be no mother-daughter dance. "We're choosing a marriage free of old dependencies," he said, smiling like a man who had just invented freedom. Natalia, radiant in the dress Valeria had beaded by hand for 6 months, nodded beside him. "Your mother," she added softly into the mic, "has always needed us more than we needed her. It's time for all of us to grow." The room inhaled as one organism. Valeria felt every pair of eyes land on her like hot coals. She stood, walked to the banquet manager, and with the same calm voice she used to tell brides the train would be ready Tuesday, canceled the band, the bar, the Viennese table. "I paid," she said simply. "I can unpay." Then she left, heels clicking across the marble like punctuation marks on a sentence no one else was brave enough to finish. The silence that followed was worse than shouting. Natalia sent a text 2 days later, a list of boundaries. No unannounced visits. No unsolicited advice. Scheduled calls only. Valeria read it twice, deleted it, and did not reply. Her son Gabriel, 25 and gentler, came over with carnitas and honesty. "You did too much for us, Mama. We never learned how to fall because you were always the net." He didn't ask her to stop loving. He only asked her to stop catching. The machines were gone. Savings were gone. Neighbors still knocked with hems and zippers, and every "I'm sorry, I have nothing to sew with" felt like another small death. One rainy Thursday, she called her cousin Marisol in St. Augustine, Florida. Marisol had left Chicago 20 years earlier and now lived in a turquoise cottage near the beach. "Come," Marisol said. "The snowbirds pay double, triple sometimes. They want someone who cooks like home and listens like a friend. You're not finished, Prima. You're just between chapters." Sell the house on Sawyer Avenue. The house where Louis proposed on the front porch, where Natalia took her first steps, where Gabriel learned to ride a bike in the alley. Valeria walked the rooms at midnight, trailing her fingers over the wallpaper she and Louis had hung together. She opened the Bible he had given her on their 10th anniversary and let it fall open. 2 Corinthians 5:17 stared back at her. "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone, the new is here." She laughed through tears. Even Scripture was telling her to let go. She listed the house the next morning. It sold in 9 days to a young couple expecting twins. They loved the height marks, penciled inside the pantry door. Valeria left the piano. Natalia had quit lessons at 13 anyway, and packed 2 suitcases, a box of photographs, and her mother's cast-iron Comel. Gabriel and his girlfriend, Lucia, drove her to O'Hare. Natalia did not come. Florida smelled like sunscreen and possibility. Marisol met her with a hug that smelled of café con leche and sea salt. The job was perfect. Live-in companion and cook for Dr. and Mrs. Helen Caldwell, retirees from Connecticut who spent 6 months a year in a butter yellow house 2 blocks from the ocean. Dr. Helen's husband Arthur had early dementia and sometimes called Valeria Rosario, the name of his childhood nanny. Valeria didn't mind. She made arroz con gandules the way Louis liked it, thick with acciatti and love, and Arthur ate 2 plates and told her she was an angel. By November, she had bought a used brother sewing machine for $90 at the Methodist thrift store. Word spread among the snowbirds. The new lady from Chicago could shorten golf pants in an afternoon and make wedding gown alterations that looked couture. She worked mornings for the Caldwells, afternoons for whoever knocked, and walked the beach every evening until the sky turned the color of Natalia's quinceañera dress. Natalia's first message arrived on Christmas night. "I miss you." Valeria stared at the screen until it went dark, then answered with a photo of the moon over the Atlantic and nothing more. 6 weeks before the house closing, Natalia showed up without warning. She still had her key. Valeria was in the kitchen wrapping dishes in newspaper when she heard the front door open. Natalia stood in the living room surrounded by labeled boxes, Mutual, Donate, Florida, looking suddenly 12 years old again. "Mama." Her voice cracked like thin ice. Valeria wiped her hands on the apron she had sewn from leftover curtain fabric. "I'm moving to Florida, permanently." Natalia's knees gave out. She sank into the only chair not covered in boxes. "You sold the house. In 2 weeks it belongs to someone else. You were just leaving, without telling me. You were very clear about boundaries, Mija. I'm respecting them." Natalia's face crumpled. "I didn't mean forever. I didn't mean another state." Valeria kept wrapping plates. "You needed space. I'm giving you an ocean of it." Silence stretched, broken only by the soft thud of newsprint. Finally, Natalia whispered, "I can't do this." "Do what?" "Be married, be an adult. I can't even figure out how to change the air filter in the condo. Tamaz gets mad when I call maintenance. He says, 'Ask your mom, that's what she's for.' And I realized I don't know how to do anything without you." Valeria set the plate down carefully. "So the independence lasted 5 months. Natalia laughed through tears. "Less, I'm a disaster. I burned rice so badly the smoke alarm called the fire department. I mixed whites and colors and ruined Tamaz's presentation shirts. I'm terrified every time the credit card bill comes." Valeria sat on the ottoman in front of her daughter. "And whose fault is that, Natalia Sophia?" Natalia looked at her lap. "Yours and mine, mostly mine." She took a shaky breath. "Tamaz said if I kept running to you I'd never grow up, so I cut you off to prove I could do it alone. And I can't. I'm drowning." Valeria's heart performed the old familiar twist, pain, and tenderness braided so tightly she could never separate them. She reached out and tucked a loose curl behind Natalia's ear. "I did too much for you. I see that now, but you chose cruelty over kindness when you tried to fix it. You humiliated me in front of the entire family to look strong in front of your husband." Natalia flinched as if slapped. "I know, I'm so sorry. I was awful." "Yes, you were." Valeria let the words hang there, sharp and clean. Natalia wiped her face with her sleeve. "Please don't leave. Please, Mama, I need you." Valeria studied her daughter, the beautiful, terrified woman who had once been the baby who slept on her chest. "No," she said softly. "You need to learn, and I need to live." She stood. "I start my new job in 3 weeks. The Caldwells arrive the 1st of October. I'll have a room with a window that faces the sea." Natalia began to sob in earnest. Valeria knelt, cupped her daughter's wet face. "Listen to me. I will never stop being your mother, but I will no longer be your crutch. When you fall, you will get up by yourself. When you burn the rice, you will try again. And when you finally figure out how to change that air filter, you will call me and we will laugh about it together. From Florida." She kissed Natalia's forehead the way she had when nightmares woke her at 4 years old. "I love you enough to let you grow. Love me enough to let me do the same." The closing came and went. Gabriel and Lucia helped load the last boxes into a small U-Haul attached to Marisol's SUV. Natalia stood on the sidewalk clutching a paper bag. Inside were 3 things: the veil Valeria had worn at her own wedding, the height mark pencil from the pantry door, carefully sawed out and sanded, and a new industrial sewing machine still in its box, paid for with Natalia's bonus and Tamaz's guilty credit card. "I can't replace everything you sold for me," Natalia said, voice trembling, "but I can give you a way to start again." Valeria cried then, quiet, fierce tears that tasted like salt air and second chances. She hugged her children, one last time on the porch, where Louis had proposed 39 years earlier. Gabriel whispered, "Fly, Mama." Natalia whispered, "I'll learn, I promise." The drive south took 3 days. Valeria rode with the windows down, Spanish guitar on the radio, the new machine riding shotgun like a promise. In St. Augustine, the Caldwells welcomed her with key lime pie and stories about their grandchildren. Arthur called her Rosario and asked if she liked baseball. She told him she liked everything that made people happy. By December, her little sewing business had a sign above the garage. VALRIAS, ALTRATONS, hemming HERTS a specialty. Snowbirds lined up. She taught Natalia over FaceTime how to make sofrito without crying from the onions. She sent Gabriel photos of sunsets and received ultrasound pictures in return. One night in early spring, Natalia and Tamaz arrived unannounced, sunburned and sheepish, carrying suitcases and a bottle of rum. They stayed a week. Natalia cooked, only slightly charred, arroz con pollo while Tamaz learned, under Valeria's patient eye, how to thread a bobbin. On the last evening, they walked the beach together, 3 silhouettes against the gold water. "I was wrong," Tamaz said quietly. "Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors." Valeria smiled and squeezed his arm. "Now you're learning too." Years later, when little Louis Gabriel, named for the grandfathers, took his first steps on that same beach, Natalia bent down and let him fall into the sand, then cheered when he stood up again on his own. Valeria watched from her porch rocker, sewing machine humming beside her, and felt something settle in her chest, peace, vast and sun-warmed. The house on Sawyer Avenue belonged to someone else now. But the house on Anastasia Island belonged to her, and it was full of light, full of laughter, full of family who had finally learned the difference between holding on and holding close. Valeria Navarro, seamstress, mother, woman reborn, looked out at the endless horizon and whispered to the waves. "The old has gone, the new is here." And the ocean, wise and ancient, answered back with the same steady rhythm it had kept since the beginning of time. "Welcome home." The weight of thread. Rosa Delgado had spent 43 years believing that a mother's love was measured in how quietly she carried everyone else's burdens. She had sewn wedding gowns in the back room of her little shop on 18th Street in Pilsen, while her husband Miguel drove a city bus and her children Elena, 28, and Marco Jr., 25, grew up between bolts of satin and the smell of starch. When Miguel died suddenly of a heart attack 8 years ago, Rosa simply lengthened her days. She took in more alterations, taught night classes at the community center, sold the truck Miguel loved, and paid for Elena's graphic design degree and Marco's electrician apprenticeship without ever once asking for help. The breaking point came at Elena's wedding. The reception was held in a glittering rooftop garden overlooking the Chicago River. Rosa had paid for every fairy light, every calla lily, every bite of filet mignon by selling her 3 industrial sewing machines, the ones that had fed the family for 2 decades. She sat at the mother's table in a dress she had made from leftover champagne dupioni, smiling so hard her cheeks ached. Then Elena's new husband Javier took the microphone. "There will be no mother-daughter dance tonight," he announced, voice smooth as the whiskey in his hand. "We've decided to begin our marriage free of old patterns of emotional dependency. Rosa has always needed us more than we needed her. It's time for healthy distance." The rooftop went silent, except for the wind snapping the linen napkins. 300 faces turned toward Rosa. She felt the old, familiar weight settle on her chest, only this time it was made of shame instead of love. She did not cry. She stood, walked to the event captain, and canceled the band, the bar, the dessert hour. "I paid," she said in the same calm voice she used when brides panicked about a lost button. "I can stop paying." Then she left, the click of her heels swallowed by the city night. The weeks that followed were gray. Elena sent a list of boundaries by text. Marco came with tamales and gentle truths. You never let us fall, Mama. We never learned how to get back up. Rosa's savings vanished. Neighbors still knocked with hems and broken zippers, and every "I have no machines" felt like another thread pulled from the fabric of who she had been. One October afternoon, she called her cousin Teresa in St. Augustine. Teresa had fled Chicago after her own husband died, and now lived in a sky-blue bungalow near the beach. "Come south," Teresa said. "The snowbirds pay triple. They want someone who cooks like their abuela and listens like a priest. You still have years left to live, Rosa. Sell the house on 21st Place." The house where Miguel painted the kitchen yellow, because Rosa once said sunflowers made her happy. Where Elena learned to walk, and Marco lost his first tooth. Rosa opened Miguel's old Bible and let it fall where it would. Isaiah 43:19. "Behold, I am doing a new thing, do you not perceive it?" She laughed until she cried. Even God was telling her to move. She listed the house the next morning. It sold in 11 days to a young family expecting their first baby. They loved the pencil marks inside the hall closet that charted 2 children's heights. Rosa left the sunflower curtains and packed 2 suitcases, a box of photographs, and Miguel's Bible. Elena did not come to the airport. Florida smelled of salt and possibility. Teresa met her with conch fritters and a hug that lasted a full minute. The job was perfect. Live-in companion for Mr. and Mrs. Elena Caldwell in a pale green house on Sea Grove Lane, 2 blocks from the Atlantic. Mr. Caldwell had dementia and sometimes called Rosa Luz, his childhood housekeeper. Rosa made arroz con pollo the way Miguel liked it, thick with saffron and love, and Mr. Caldwell ate 3 plates and told her she was a saint. By Christmas, she had bought a second-hand juki for $90 and set up a folding table in the garage. Snowbirds lined up. "Can you take in these linen trousers? Let out this mother-of-the-bride gown." Rosa worked mornings for the Caldwells, afternoons for whoever knocked, and walked the beach every evening until her grief loosened its grip. Elena's first text came on New Year's Eve. "I miss you." Rosa stared at the screen until it dimmed, then sent back a photo of the moon over the ocean and nothing else. 6 weeks before the house closing back in Chicago, Elena showed up without warning. She still had her key. Rosa was in the kitchen wrapping Miguel's sunflower plates in newspaper when the front door opened. "Mama." Elena stood among towers of labeled boxes. Keep, donate, Florida. Looking suddenly 16 again, the day she got her first period and Rosa had sewn her a special robe with tiny embroidered moons. "I'm moving to Florida," Rosa said quietly. "Permanently." Elena's knees buckled. She sank into the single unpacked armchair. "You sold the house. In 12 days it belongs to someone else. You were just leaving. You drew the boundary, Mija. I'm standing on the other side of it." Elena's face crumpled. "I can't do this. I can't be married. I can't be an adult. I burned dinner so badly the smoke detector called the fire department. Javier gets furious when I don't know how to pay the electric bill online. I'm terrified every single day." Rosa kept wrapping plates. So independence lasted 4 months. Elena laughed through tears. "Les, I'm a disaster." She took a shaky breath. "Javier said if I kept running to you I'd never grow up, so I cut you off to prove I could stand alone. And I can't." Rosa set the plate down. "And whose fault is that, Elena Sophia?" Elena looked at her shoes. "Yours and mine, mostly mine." She met Rosa's eyes. "I was cruel because I was scared. Scared of disappointing Javier. Scared that you'd be angry I was so useless. Scared that if I admitted I needed you, I'd never learn to stand." Rosa sat on the ottoman. "I was scared too. After your father died, you and Marco were all I had. The idea that you could live perfectly well without me felt like dying a second time. So I kept making myself indispensable. And you let me." They were quiet a long time. Elena whispered, "Please don't leave." Rosa studied her daughter's face, still the same heart-shaped face that had once fallen asleep on her chest every night. "I have to think," she said finally. "Give me until tomorrow." That night Rosa called Teresa. "They want me to stay. They'll buy me new machines. They'll pay the penalty to cancel the sale. But I've tasted the sea, Teresa. I've tasted being Rosa, not just Mama." Teresa laughed softly. "Then don't choose forever. Choose seasons. Stay long enough to teach them how to stand. Then come here and teach yourself how to fly." The next morning Elena arrived with café con leche and conchas from the panaderia on 26th. Marco came too, eyes red from crying or lack of sleep. Rosa wasn't sure which. "I'll stay," Rosa said, "but there are conditions." "Anything," Elena breathed. "First, we learn together what an adult mother-daughter relationship looks like. I stop catching you before you fall. You stop running away when you do fall. Second, if either of you ever feels I'm too much again, you tell me to my face. No more microphones, no more lists. Third, next winter I spend 3 months in Florida, not to escape you, to live the part of my life that has nothing to do with being your mother. You may visit, you may not move in." Elena's smile was sunrise slow. "Deal." They hugged in the middle of the half-packed living room. A real hug, ribs creaking, tears soaking both their blouses. That afternoon, Javier arrived with apology in his eyes and a catalog of industrial machines. He and Elena bought her 2 new Jukis, better, faster, quieter than the ones she had sold. They paid the penalty to keep the house. Rosa called Mrs. Caldwell, who laughed and said, "My dear, the guest room will be waiting whenever you're ready. The ocean isn't going anywhere." 6 months later, Rosa woke at dawn because she wanted to, not because someone needed breakfast. She made coffee for one, sat at the kitchen table Miguel had refinished the year before he died, and opened her order book. Brides-to-be, quinceañeras, grandmothers needing Easter dresses. The shop was reborn, now called simply ROSA. The new machines hummed like contented cats. Elena dropped by most Sundays with laundry she still didn't trust herself to do and stayed for lunch. They argued about money and laughed about the time Elena tried to make rice and created concrete. Javier learned to thread a bobbin and stopped flinching when Rosa hugged him hello. Marco and his girlfriend, Lucia, announced their first baby. Rosa closed the shop for a week and painted the old nursery sunflower yellow again. Some mornings, Rosa still walked to the lakefront and looked east, tasting salt on the wind that wasn't there. She knew that next January, the Atlantic would be waiting, patient and wide. She would spend 3 months sewing for snowbirds, walking barefoot at sunrise, discovering who Rosa Delgado was when no one needed her to be anything but herself. And when April came, she would come home to children who had learned to stand, and who now understood that love was not a net, but a pair of open hands. The house on 21st Place still had pencil marks in the closet. The kitchen was still yellow. But the woman who lived there now carried her burdens lightly, and when she sewed, she no longer stitched herself invisibly into everyone else's dreams. She stitched her own name into every hem. Rosa. Mother. Woman. The color of salt. Camila Ortega had always believed that love was a kind of invisible stitching. The tighter you pulled the thread, the stronger the seam. For 41 years, she had stitched her entire world together with her own hands. Her tiny alterations shop on Blue Island Avenue in Chicago smelled of starch, coffee, and the particular sweetness of satin left too long in the sun. When her husband Raul died of pancreatic cancer 9 years earlier, Camilla simply worked longer hours, took in more wedding gowns, and poured every spare dollar into her children. Sophia, 29, a newlywed marketing manager, and Diego, 26, a quiet paramedic who still kissed her cheek every night before his shift. The rupture came at Sophia's wedding. The reception was held at the Adler Planetarium, the city glittering beneath a ceiling of projected stars. Camilla had paid for everything: catering, flowers, the string quartet, by selling her 3 beloved industrial machines and taking out a second mortgage on the little brick house on 23rd Street, where Raul had taught Diego to ride a bike in the alley. She was wearing a dress she had made herself from midnight blue silk, the color of the sky the night Raul proposed. She was smiling so hard her face hurt. Then Sophia's husband Mateo took the microphone. "We've decided there will be no mother-daughter dance tonight," he said, voice clear and kind and absolutely lethal. "Sophia and I are beginning our marriage free from old patterns of enmeshment. Camilla has always needed us more than we needed her. It's time for healthier boundaries." The room went still. Camilla felt every star above them blink out at once. She did not scream. She walked calmly to the event manager and canceled the open bar, the dessert course, the fireworks over the lake. "I paid for the sky," she said quietly. "I can turn it off." Then she left, the click of her heels swallowed by the hush of 300 people who suddenly remembered they had somewhere else to be. The aftermath was colder than any Chicago January. Sophia sent a bullet-pointed email of boundaries. Diego came over with Pozole and tears in his eyes. "You never let us bruise, Mama. We never learned how to heal." Without machines, the shop became a tomb of half-finished gowns. Neighbors knocked with broken zippers and hopeful smiles, and every "I'm sorry, I have nothing to sew with" felt like another grave marker. One February morning, snow piling against the windows, Camilla called her cousin Lourdes in St. Augustine, Florida. Lourdes had fled south after her own husband died, and now lived in a coral-colored bungalow 2 blocks from the Atlantic. "Come," Lourdes said simply. "The snowbirds pay in sunshine and dollars. You're not dead, Camilla. You're just between lives. Sell the house on 23rd Street." The house where Raul had painted the kitchen, the exact green of Camilla's, eyes the year Sophia was born. Where Diego had learned to read sitting on the radiator, because the couch was always covered in tulle. That night, she opened Raul's old Bible and let it fall open. Isaiah 43:19. "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?" She laughed until she sobbed. Even God was tired of her martyrdom. She listed the house the next day. It sold in 9 days to a young couple expecting their first child. They loved the pencil marks on the doorframe that charted 2 children's heights. Camilla left the kitchen green and took only 2 suitcases, a box of photographs, Raul's Bible, and the thimble he had given her on their first anniversary. Sophia did not come to the airport. Florida smelled of orange blossoms and possibility. Lourdes met her with a paper cup of café con leche and a hug that lasted a full minute. The job was perfect. Live-in companion and cook for Mrs. Eleanor Caldwell, a retired history professor, and her husband Arthur, who had dementia and sometimes called Camilla Maria, the name of his first love. Camilla made sancocho the way Raul taught her, thick with love and yuca, and Arthur ate 2 bowls and told her she was an angel sent from heaven. By April, she had bought a second-hand brother sewing machine for $80 and set up a card table on the screened porch. Snowbirds knocked. "Can you hem these golf slacks? Let out this mother-of-the-bride dress." She worked mornings for the Caldwells, afternoons for whoever wandered by, and walked the beach every evening until the grief loosened its grip and turned into something lighter, curiosity. Sophia's first text arrived on Mother's Day. "I miss you." Camilla stared at the screen until it went dark, then sent back a photo of the sunrise over the Atlantic and nothing else. 6 months after the wedding, Sophia showed up unannounced at the little brick house on 23rd Street, key still on her ring. Camilla was in the kitchen wrapping Raul's green plates in newspaper when the door opened. "Mama." Sophia stood among towers of labeled boxes, keep, donate, Florida, looking suddenly 15 again, the day she got her learner's permit and cried because she was terrified to drive. "I'm moving to Florida," Camilla said, voice steady. "Permanently." Sophia's knees gave way. She sank into the single unpacked chair. "You sold the house. In 10 days it belongs to someone else." You were just leaving. You drew the line, Mija. I'm standing on the other side of it. Sophia began to cry, ugly, wrenching sobs that belonged to a much smaller girl. I can't do this. I can't be married. I can't be an adult. I ruined Mateo's favorite shirt in the wash. I cried for 40 minutes because I couldn't figure out how to assemble the IKEA dresser. I'm terrified every single day. Camilla kept wrapping plates. So independence lasted 5 months. Sophia laughed through tears. Les, I'm a disaster. She looked up. Mateo said if I kept running to you, I'd never grow up, so I cut you off to prove I could stand alone. And I can't. Camilla set the plate down. And whose fault is that, Sophie or Alina? Sophia wiped her face with her sleeve. Yours, and mine, mostly mine. She took a shaky breath. I was cruel because I was scared. Scared of disappointing Mateo. Scared that you'd be angry I was so useless. Scared that if I admitted I needed you, I'd never learn to stand. Camilla sat on the ottoman. I was scared too. After your father died, you and Diego were all I had. The idea that you could live perfectly well without me felt like dying again, so I kept making myself indispensable. And you let me. They were quiet a long time. Sophia whispered, please don't leave. Camilla studied her daughter's face, still the same heart-shaped face that had once fallen asleep on her shoulder every night. I have to think, she said finally. Give me until tomorrow. That night Camilla called Lourdes. They want me to stay. They'll buy me new machines. They'll pay the penalty. But I've tasted the ocean, Lourdes. I've tasted being Camilla, not just Mama. Lourdes laughed softly. Then don't choose forever. Choose seasons. Stay long enough to teach them how to stand. Then come here and teach yourself how to fly. The next morning Sophia arrived with conchas from Nouveau Leon Bakery and Café de Ala. Diego came too, eyes red, carrying a box of Camilla's favorite thread colors he had saved from childhood. I'll stay, Camilla said, but there are conditions. Anything, Sophia breathed. First, we learn together what an adult mother-daughter relationship looks like. I stop catching you before you fall. You stop running away when you do fall. Second, if either of you ever feels I'm too much again, you tell me to my face. No more microphones, no more lists. Third, every winter I spend 3 months in Florida, not to escape you, to live the part of my life that has nothing to do with being your mother. You may visit, you may not move in. Sophia's smile was sunrise slow. Deal. They hugged in the middle of the half-packed living room, a real hug, ribs creaking, tears soaking both their blouses. That afternoon Mateo arrived with apology in his eyes and a catalog of industrial machines. He and Sophia bought her 2 new Jukis, faster, quieter, more precise than the ones she had sold. They paid the penalty to keep the house. Camilla called Mrs. Caldwell, who laughed and said, My dear, the ocean keeps its promises. We'll be here when you're ready. 18 months later, Camilla woke at dawn because she wanted to, not because someone needed breakfast. She made coffee for one, sat at the green kitchen table Raul had loved, and opened her order book. Brides-to-be, quinceañeras, grandmothers needing Easter dresses. The shop was reborn, now called simply CAMILA. The new machines hummed like contented cats. Sophia dropped by most Wednesdays with laundry. She still didn't entirely trust herself to do and stayed for dinner. They argued about money and laughed about the times Sophia tried to make arroz con pollo and created library paste. Mateo learned to thread a bobbin and stopped flinching when Camilla hugged him hello. Diego and his fiancée Luz announced their first baby. Camilla closed the shop for a week and painted the old nursery the color of sea glass. Every January she flew south. The Caldwells welcomed her like a daughter returned from war. She sewed for snowbirds, walked the beach barefoot at sunrise, took watercolor classes with silver-haired widows who swore like sailors and danced like teenagers. She sent Sophia photos of sunsets and received, in return, ultrasound pictures and videos of first steps. One February evening, As Camilla sat on the porch of the coral-colored bungalow watching the tide pull back its lace hem, Sofia and Matteo arrived unannounced, sunburned and sheepish, carrying suitcases and a bottle of mezcal. They stayed 10 days. Sofia cooked, only slightly charred, Camerone's al mojo de ajo while Matteo learned, under Camilla's patient eye, how to cut a perfect bias binding. On the last night, they walked the beach together, 3 silhouettes against the rose-gold water. "I was wrong," Matteo said quietly. "Boundaries aren't walls, they're windows." Camilla smiled and squeezed his arm. "Now you're learning too." Years later, when little Raul Matteo took his first steps on that same beach, Sofia bent down and let him fall into the sand, then cheered when he stood up again on his own. Camilla watched from her porch rocker, thimble flashing in the sun, and felt something settle in her chest, peace, vast and salt-sweet. The house on 23rd Street still had pencil marks on the doorframe. The kitchen was still the color of Camilla's eyes. But the woman who lived there now carried her love lightly, and when she sewed, she no longer stitched herself invisibly into everyone else's dreams. She stitched her own name into every hem. Camilla. Mother. Woman. Whole. And every winter, when the Atlantic called her home, she answered not running away but running toward. Because she had finally learned that the bravest thing a mother can do is teach her children how to stand. And then stand brilliantly on her own 2 feet while they watch in wonder.